The spacecraft entered Earth's atmosphere cloaked in a thin veil of solar refraction, silent as an owl, and only slightly less judgmental. Inside the cabin, Zarel adjusted the hem of her diplomatic tunic for the 12th time, although it was impossible to make it look less like a ceremonial curtain. She had chosen it for its neutral colors, dignified trim, and because it didn't itch, though her understanding of Earth's textile fashion was still based entirely on a mid-galactic translation database labeled Planetary Apparel 1994. Commencing touchdown, announced the onboard intelligence system in a voice suspiciously modeled after a game show host. Zarel inhaled, her long ears twitching slightly with nerves, and braced herself as the ship settled down behind a thick grove of trees half a kilometer from the human research facility she'd been assigned to. The ship's landing left only a whisper of bent grass and a few disoriented squirrels. A panel slid open. Cool earth air slipped in, fresh with moisture, spores, and the distant scent of wet asphalt. Zarel squinted through the haze and took her first step onto human soil, immediately tripping on a pine cone and sprawling across the grass in what she would later catalog as a gravity-related diplomatic greeting. She rose, brushing leaves from her hair, trying to ignore the moss clinging to her tunic like it had just found its soulmate. Her first step as Etheri observer on Earth failed, but the second was steadier. The third brought her to a narrow paved path winding toward the distant structure. The building loomed in the earth mist, rectangular, utterly uninspiring, and gently humming with a generator that probably hadn't passed inspection since the late Holocene. Zarel approached with the dignified air of someone who had memorized 3 different human handshakes and couldn't remember which one involved thumb snapping. The doors hissed open automatically, either a warm welcome or a very delayed alarm. Inside, a row of humans looked up from their various glowing screens. They were surrounded by cups with mysterious liquids, scattered paperwork, and devices that beeped when touched, usually for no clear reason. "Hi," one of them said brightly. "You must be Zoril." "Zarel," she corrected, with an E and only one cultural conquest on record. The room fell into an awkward silence. Then someone at the back chuckled. "Well, you'll fit right in." She was shown to her workstation, a table covered with wires, 2 mugs with something growing inside them, and a chair that looked like it had lost a bet. Next to it sat a human male, tallish, lightly unkempt, and sipping coffee with the resigned air of someone who had accepted chaos as a lifestyle. Dr. Samuel Carter. He gave her a half wave. "Welcome to the Department of Environmental Metrics and Inexplicably Complicated Spreadsheets." "I am honored to observe," she said. "I am particularly excited about the complex mating rituals." He paused. "You mean species interaction studies?" "Yes," she said. "That is what I said." Samuel blinked slowly, then took another sip. "Right. Well, I'm sure you'll have a very illuminating time." The morning passed with Ziril attempting to understand the software by poking it. The screen flickered menacingly. When Samuel offered help, she looked at the mouse and said, "Why is the creature not moving?" He nearly inhaled his pen. At lunch, she joined the humans in the break room, an area where nutritional intake occurred around devices emitting high volumes of noise and color. She was handed a sandwich. She examined it like it might evolve. "This contains carbon compounds, yes?" "Technically," said Samuel. "Also sadness. This pleases me." Midway through the meal, a rectangular object lit up in the corner. Humans gathered around it, shouting at the images. Zarel craned her neck to see. 2 people arguing on a rooftop in heavy rain, then kissing, then running dramatically through an airport. She turned to Samuel. "This is mating behavior?" He followed her gaze. "That? Oh, that's just a rom-com." Zarel frowned. "A ritual of bonding during comic warfare?" "Romantic comedy," he clarified. "It's entertainment." She nodded slowly. "And this is how humans pair?" "Well, sort of. It's more like a story." "I see. Then the data must be cross-referenced." She made a note on her pad. "Subject exhibits fire escape acrobatics as mating cue. Status, possible injury risk." The humans returned to their screens. Zarel cornered Samuel by the coffee machine. "This individual, She pointed to the screen where the romantic couple was now slow dancing in a barn, has confessed their longing in 5 separate symbolic exchanges. Does this not indicate an imminent reproductive sequence? Samuel nearly spit coffee onto his shoes. Not exactly. I must refine my data. She tilted her head. Is there a threshold number of kisses required before attachment is confirmed? Depends on the rom-com, he muttered. I will need more samples. She narrowed her eyes. How many documentaries are there about this behavior? He stared at her, alarmed. Wait, you think rom-coms are documentaries? You said it was a story, she said. Humans base stories on truth. He groaned, rubbing his forehead. Oh no. Zarel stared at the machine again. So humans confess desire on rooftops, in airports while fleeing taxis, and with cakes? Look, it's not, he sighed. Okay, just don't model your conclusions off those. Please. She tapped her datapad. Noted, but mating cakes seem extremely effective. He chuckled, giving her a sidelong glance. You're going to be a lot of trouble, aren't you? I am told I am extremely efficient. No doubt. When the day ended, Zarel remained in the break room, watching yet another documentary unfold. 2 humans argued, fell into a fountain, and then made eye contact like gravity had shifted. She whispered into her recorder, the complexity of human rituals continues to unfold. Subject emotions fluctuate at extreme intervals. Cake may be critical to success. Outside the window, the stars blinked faintly in the dusk. Earth, with its chaotic people and passionate screen rituals, was far stranger than she had been told, and far more interesting. She couldn't wait to explore the rest. The next morning began with Zarel attempting to enter the building through a window because the door hadn't recognized her face. She considered this a sign that the building held deep-seated resentment toward her, possibly a territorial response. Samuel found her halfway through climbing over a copier. You know we have key cards for a reason, right? I assume this was an alternate entrance reserved for high-security clearance or ceremonial gymnastics. Try the front door next time. It doesn't bite. That's what they said about the sandwich. Back at her station, Zarel continued her analysis of human courtship. Her desk now featured an elaborate flowchart that began with visual contact initiated and ended with consummation or ice cream consumption, ambiguous success state. There were arrows, some glowed. Samuel leaned over. Is that a mating diagram? I have incorporated your earlier corrections. You will see I removed fire escape acrobatics as a mandatory step, though it remains a popular escalation mechanism. Why is there a stick figure holding a pie? Ceremonial dessert exchange, she said, deadpan, based on a statistically relevant sample of 13 films. He studied the chart, then pointed. What's this little guy with an exclamation mark? That denotes sudden public declarations, usually when the subject is boarding a long-distance transport vehicle. He coughed into his sleeve. This is surprisingly thorough. I cross-referenced all available media using your intranet. I've watched 54 romantic comedies in the last 7 hours. There is a troubling lack of consistency. For instance, kissing appears both as an introductory and concluding behavior. There are no clear rules. Welcome to human relationships. Zarel frowned. Your species thrives in chaos. You get used to it. Midway through their conversation, a department head entered with a clipboard and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else, including deep space. We've got a joint presentation tomorrow, he announced. Public outreach thing. Earth science students. 1 human, 1 alien. You're up, Carter. Samuel blinked. Me? You and tall ears. Zarel raised a hand. That is me. The department head grunted. Talk for 15 minutes. Say something smart about climate or carbon or whatever. Don't scare the kids. They watch internet content involving men jumping into cacti, Zarel replied. I do not believe they can be scared. After he left, Samuel groaned. I hate presentations. I have never given one, Zarel said, brightening. This is optimal. I was being sarcastic. So was I, possibly. They spent the afternoon preparing. Samuel explained the concept of slides. Zarel insisted on including graphs animated with slow zoom-ins and simulated applause. He vetoed anything that sparkled. She studied human gestures, especially the ones used during public speaking. Am I to hold my hands like a sleeping insect? Or do I do the power W? That's not a thing. It is if you do this. She spread her fingers and made a W shape with intense seriousness. It symbolizes we. It symbolizes arthritis. Still, they worked through it. Samuel gave her a crash course on tone, timing, and not reading directly from the screen like a malfunctioning AI. Zarel practiced until she could say photosynthesis without sounding like it was part of a ritual chant. That evening, back in the break room, she watched another rom-com for emotional calibration. In this one, two rivals ran a bakery and ended up locked in a freezer. By the end, they were married and opening a second location in Tuscany. I must ask, she said, turning to Samuel, if humans become trapped in refrigerated units, is that a guaranteed mating trigger? No, that's just lazy writing, she nodded. So, unlikely to occur naturally. Very well. The next morning, the presentation began inside a lecture hall shaped like a concrete walnut. Dozens of students stared at the stage with glazed expressions, their attention held only by the promise of free snacks afterward. Samuel led with data. Rising temperatures, melting ice. Something about methane plumes. It was serious and precise and mostly ignored. Then Zarel stepped forward. Greetings, youth units, she said. I am Zarel of Aetheri Prime. I have come to discuss your planet's climate crisis and its disturbing similarity to a malfunctioning sauna. The room blinked as one. You emit gases in quantities that would shame a battlecruiser. Your oceans are boiling slowly, like soup. If I were your planet, I would have already filed for evacuation rights. There was a stunned silence. Then someone laughed. Zarel tilted her head. Was that humor response appropriate? She asked Samuel over the mic. Oddly, yes. Excellent. She turned back. Also, I have learned that in many of your ritual films, love triumphs after emotional chaos, and usually cake. Perhaps Earth should attempt love with its biosphere, or at least stop trying to poison it. A few students actually applauded. Afterward, as they stepped off stage, Samuel grinned. You kind of nailed it. I believe I achieved 83% rhetorical accuracy. Also, they offered me a cupcake. That's basically a standing ovation. Zarel took the cupcake in both hands. Then I shall consider this a successful bonding ritual. Careful, Samuel said. If you're not careful, someone's going to propose by the vending machine. I've prepared for that contingency. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a miniature chart titled Human Marriage Scenarios, snack-based. He laughed. You're gonna be the death of me. Only if your lifespan is compromised by extreme delight. Later, as the building lights dimmed and the staff went home, Zarel sat by the window, watching the clouds drift across the sky. She recorded a note. Day 2. Human bonding remains elusive but increasingly compelling. Subject Carter continues to exhibit kindness and confusion. He may require further observation. Also, cupcakes are effective emotional stabilizers. She paused. And if mating requires declarations in danger, I may need a rooftop. Samuel arrived at the lab Monday morning to the unmistakable sound of an orbital flute concerto echoing through the hallway. At first, he thought someone had accidentally clicked on a music file. Then he turned the corner and saw Zarel standing on a chair, aiming a small projector at the ceiling. Nebulae swirled overhead in luminous arcs. An alien harp twanged in the background with suspicious drama. Morning, he said cautiously, setting down his coffee. Are we hosting a diplomatic summit or just scaring the janitor? This is part of my new initiative, Zarel said. I have concluded that emotional engagement increases data retention. I am launching Project Atmosphere, education via ambience. Does it have to feel like I'm about to get proposed to by a sentient cloud? The clouds have not responded to diplomatic outreach. Yet, Samuel watched a tiny holographic comet zip past the coat rack and collide with a simulation of Venus, which began weeping pink steam. Is Venus supposed to cry? Only if she feels neglected. He rubbed his temples. Right. Let me know when the planets start hugging. Until then, we've got actual work. Zarel hopped down. I have made great progress in understanding your meteorological patterns. They are both complex and emotionally unstable, not unlike the protagonists of your mating documentaries. They're not documentaries, Zarel. I know, they are allegorical training exercises. She tapped her tablet. However, I have discovered a new variable I believe may be critical to understanding human bonding. Samuel braced himself. Let me guess. Socks? Close. Pets. What? Companion animals. Fuzzy quadrupeds. They appear repeatedly as emotional catalysts. I require one. You want a pet. For scientific reasons, emotional resonance, thematically appropriate story arc. Samuel took a long sip of coffee, then sighed. Okay, fine, but we're getting something low maintenance. I was thinking of a Terran wolf cub. Try again. Scaled down aquatic cephalopod? Nope. A cat? I can live with that. 20 minutes later, they stood in a local animal shelter surrounded by various species, emitting hopeful noises and occasional odors. Ziril peered into each enclosure with the scrutiny of a high-level diplomat evaluating planetary ambassadors. This one is licking its own toes, she said. High approval rating among humans. This one is staring at me with intent, possibly political. That's just a tabby, he's hungry. This one looks like it has seen war. That's probably accurate. Eventually, she selected a round, elderly black and white cat who sneezed when she touched him. He has chosen me. He's allergic to everything. An ideal match. We shall bond through mutual confusion. Back at the lab, the cat was named Diplomat Huggles. He promptly took up residence on a stack of climate reports and refused to move, unless gently bribed with snacks or lengthy apologies. Ziril doted on him with the reverence of a royal retainer. She fashioned him a tiny cloak out of unused badge lanyards. He requires dignity. Samuel watched as Diplomat Huggles sat on his keyboard for the third time that hour. He requires boundaries. He is asserting dominance. He just sent an unfinished spreadsheet to the entire UN database. A bold ambassadorial maneuver. Throughout the week, Ziril updated her research logs with unusual enthusiasm. Day 5. Subject Carter appears increasingly tolerant of cat-induced data corruption. Our emotional exchange rate is improving. Today he shared his second muffin with me, without prompting. I believe this is a symbolic gesture. Day 6. Diplomat Huggles initiated eye contact followed by deliberate sneezing. Emotional threshold confirmed. Day 7. I have now witnessed Samuel experiencing human sadness during a film involving a dying robot. He denied crying. I offered my ceremonial shoulder. Meanwhile, their work continued. They tracked rainfall anomalies. They simulated greenhouse gas interactions using miniature drones and colored vapor. Ziril proposed that climate models be delivered via interpretive dance. Samuel responded by building a PowerPoint titled, Why That's a Terrible Idea. But even amid graphs and debates, something intangible began to form. Slight glances, unspoken rhythms. A shared joke about a malfunctioning thermostat. The way he rolled his eyes when she mispronounced phenology, followed by her delighted repetition of the word until it became a chant. Then came the incident with the AI assistant. Ziril, having attempted to customize the lab's voice interface, accidentally gave it her own language protocols. The next morning, Samuel walked in to find the coffee machine reciting planetary hymns in Etherian hexameter. Why is the printer singing? It is attempting to express its desire for fusion. Samuel tried to ask the system for his files, only to be told in a very poetic tone, Access denied, O weary dreamer of spreadsheets, for your soul lacks the key. I hate this planet, he muttered. I can reverse it, Ziril said. Eventually, or perhaps it is time we learned the value of riddles in office life. You're going to be the death of me. You keep saying that, yet you continue to breathe in my presence. She smiled then, softly, unexpectedly. He looked at her a little longer than necessary. By the end of the week, Ziril found herself lying awake in the observatory dome, watching Earth's moon traverse the stars. She recorded one last note. Day 8. Human bonding is stranger than anticipated. It resists logic. It grows through accident, irritation, and kindness. I suspect I have begun experiencing something beyond observation. Samuel smiles when I misinterpret things now. Not because he pities me, but because he enjoys the moment. There was a pause. I suspect I enjoy the moments too. From the corner of the dome, Diplomat Huggles sneezed. The diplomatic emergency began with a sneeze. More specifically, Diplomat Huggles' sneeze. The lab's central atmospheric regulator, a sensitive, over-engineered device imported from New Zurich orbit, had recently been retrofitted to better simulate Earth's natural air quality. Unfortunately, it was also allergic to fur. One particularly robust sneeze from Huggles, amplified by Zyral's well-meaning but entirely misguided installation of a purr translator, triggered a cascade failure that temporarily reversed the oxygen-nitrogen ratio in the lab's west wing. Samuel, halfway through his coffee, choked and blinked. Why does it smell like a burnt asteroid in here? Zarel crouched beneath the table with the wheezing cat and a pile of wires that looked suspiciously like recycled earpiece antennas, peered up innocently. He attempted to initiate a treaty with the HVAC system. You turned the cat into a diplomat for the air conditioning. I believed he had leverage. He has dandruff. While emergency ventilation corrected the problem, the two of them were reassigned to temporary workspaces in the Botanical Dome. Zirel welcomed the relocation. She liked the plants. They didn't question her diagrams or argue about the merits of interpretive climate forecasting. Samuel, on the other hand, looked warily at the 8-foot-tall glowing vine labeled caution. Telepathic spores may cause existential dread. Tell me again why this place is funded. Because bureaucracy fears botany, Zarel said, adjusting her light visor, and also because some of your plant species have threatened legal action. He shook his head and scrolled through data on a portable screen. Let's just finish this atmospheric shift model. You handle humidity, I'll do thermal flux. You trust me with humidity? She asked with mock offense. You installed a sentient umbrella last week. I figure nothing worse can happen. It's not sentient. It's emotionally aware. It cried during a thunderstorm. It was moved. Despite the strange surroundings and the occasional vine trying to nest in Zarel's hair, the work proceeded smoothly until she asked a question that derailed everything. Samuel, she said, glancing up from her monitor, how do humans choose? He looked up. Choose what? Mating partners. He immediately made the kind of noise one makes after inhaling their own tongue. You can't just ask that. You have watched 12 separate romantic comedies with me. You explain the symbolism of gift-giving rituals, the function of rooftop monologues, and the importance of unspoken glances, but none of it explains the selection algorithm. It's not an algorithm, he said, face already red. It's complicated. Zarel narrowed her eyes. So, it's chaos again. Not chaos, it's just, look, people meet. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they fall in love in elevators or while hiding from radioactive baboons. Sometimes they don't. Statistical anomalies. Welcome to humanity. She considered this gravely. Does physical symmetry matter? Sometimes. Biological scent markers? Okay, that one's real. Do humans bond over shared trauma? Far more often than they should. And jokes? His mouth quirked. Definitely jokes. Then perhaps, she said thoughtfully, we are compatible. He stared at her. She stared back, perfectly calm, like she had just asked about the soil pH in Mars-grown carrots. Are you saying you're interested? I am saying that if mating requires mutual appreciation, humor, and the occasional incident involving confused plumbing, then we are well within parameters. Samuel tried to breathe. You really have no filter. It was removed as part of my observational training. Unfiltered dialogue yields greater data fidelity. He stood abruptly, knocking over a fern that hissed and slithered away. I need air. You are currently surrounded by 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. I meant a walk. She blinked, then nodded. Should I accompany you? No, I think I need to recalibrate alone for a minute. After he left, Zarel sat still for a long time. Diplomat Huggles, who had snuck into the dome via a ventilation tube, plopped into her lap and began purring loudly. She looked at him. Did I err? The cat sneezed again. She frowned. That does not answer the question. Back in the main building, Samuel wandered the hallways in a daze. His mind replayed the conversation on a loop. We are well within parameters. What did that even mean? Was she serious? Was this a joke? Was she studying him? Was she flirting? Was she, God forbid, both? He found himself at the vending machine, staring at rows of prepackaged sandwiches and suspiciously glowing protein bars. A familiar voice interrupted his spiraling. If you are considering a snack-based proposal, I suggest the triangle-shaped carbohydrates. They appear symbolic. He turned. Zarel stood there, holding a tablet and looking far too calm. I thought you were giving me space. I calculated your likely trajectory. You rarely resist synthetic cheese. He ran a hand through his hair. Zarel, I don't know what to say. Then allow me. She stepped closer. I am unfamiliar with many human customs. Your mating behaviors are complex and contradictory, but I do understand curiosity and affection and the desire to sit near someone even when there is no data to exchange. He met her gaze, soft and steady. So this isn't an experiment to you? I have observed. I have concluded. I wish to proceed. If you are amenable. He let out a breath and laughed, soft, incredulous. You really do make it sound like a field report. She tilted her head. Would you prefer a sonnet? I'd prefer dinner. Her ears twitched. Is that a mating step or a nutritional requirement? He smiled. Both. And with that, they stood by the vending machine in silence, watching Diplomat Huggles attempt to crawl inside. Samuel sat across from Zarel at the tiny table in the dim corner of their favorite late-night diner, the hum of starship traffic filtering through the panoramic windows. The menu was holographic, shimmering with choices that would have seemed like wizardry to humans a century ago. But tonight the food seemed secondary. The air between them carried a curious mixture of nerves and warmth, like when a star is just beginning to glow, but hasn't yet burst into full light. So, Samuel began, fingers drumming lightly on the table. After all the protocols, the experiments, and the near-disastrous HVAC incidents, where do we go from here? Zarel's long ears twitched, betraying an expression Samuel had come to recognize, amused contemplation. From observation to participation, she replied, I have learned much about human unpredictability, which may be the best lesson of all. He smiled. Yeah, unpredictability seems to be your specialty too. That is a fair assessment, she said with mock humility. I have developed what you might call affection. For you, for humans. For your irrational, chaotic, spectacular ways of living and connecting. Samuel felt a smile spreading uncontrollably. Funny thing, I was just about to say the same for you. Diplomat Huggles, now sporting a tiny bow tie that Zarel had crafted, jumped onto the table with all the dignity a cat can muster after nearly knocking over a star map projector. He gave a precise sneeze and looked expectantly between them. Looks like we have an ambassador here who supports our alliance, Samuel said. Maybe the universe isn't so huge and lonely after all. Zarel reached out and let her fingers brush his hand, a subtle but meaningful touch that spoke volumes without words. You once told me humans do not mate this often, and I laughed at your astonishment. But now I understand. It's not the frequency that matters. It's the connection, the choices, the moments, the small acts of kindness and humor that build something greater. Samuel's eyes softened. So, does that mean I get to be your choice? Your choice has been confirmed, she said, eyes sparkling. And if I may be bold, I propose we explore this. Experiment together, without observation or hypothesis, but with all the unpredictability we can muster. He laughed, genuine and full of hope. Deal, but I'm warning you, sometimes I'm even less predictable than your telepathic plants. She tilted her head, amused. Challenge accepted. Outside, the twin moons of Earth and Etheria hung low, casting gentle light over a world where the boundaries between alien and human, observer and participant, were fading into something new. Somewhere nearby, a robotic waiter delivered steaming cups of synthetic coffee, and the faint sound of laughter echoed. Diplomat Huggles sneezed once more, sealing their quiet covenant of curiosity and affection. Together they faced the unknown, not as strangers, but as partners, ready to write a story as unpredictable and beautiful as the stars themselves.